So hey guys, welcome to 2025 and my first video of the year. Today we're going to be looking at a knife design, a historical knife design, and one that I have grown very fond of using an awful lot in the woods recently. And I want to talk about a few things, elements of the design and how that design has changed as our sort of understanding of bushcraft and our way of practicing bushcraft has changed. So I do hope you'll enjoy following this little video. It's not going to be a long one, and we're just going to be looking at the Nessmuk, which is a fantastic knife, probably designed by George Washington Sears. So Nessmuk is a very famous name in the outdoor and bushcraft community. And Nessmuk's actually a pen name for George W. Sears, who was an outdoorsman who sort of celebrated camping and the outdoors and the benefits of it for recreation, which is obviously why I do bushcraft. I do it because I love it and I find it enjoyable and I get a lot of benefits from doing it. So Nessmuk's always been someone that I've sort of resonated with, and although this is obviously quite an old book, it was published in 1884, it still rings true in a lot of ways. But our understanding of bushcraft has developed and how we practice it has changed with all modern materials. For example, my carter obviously wasn't a thing back when Nessmuk was writing woodcraft and camping. So things have developed and have progressed, and how we practice bushcraft and the tools we carry have slightly changed. But his writings have inspired a number of different designs, a number of different kits that people carry into the woods to this day. And he remains a very influential writer. And if you haven't read this book, I would highly recommend it to all of my followers. I actually recently came into this copy of it. I had read it before a long time ago and misplaced my copy. And my friend Mikey, he sent me this copy, which is really kind of him. So yeah, let's dive into what a Nessmuk knife is. We'll learn a little bit more about George Washington Sears. I believe his pen name Nessmuk was actually from a childhood friend or a friend he had who was of the Native American community, which makes this even cooler, I think, anyway. So let's dive right in, have a look at what makes a Nessmuk knife a Nessmuk, and have a look at one of the classic knife designs and how it has developed over time. Now, in my introduction, I said that this knife, the Nessmuk, was probably designed by George Washington Sears or Nessmuk. And the truth is, we don't actually know the first person to design a knife with this distinctive shape, this sort of bulbous nose and big belly. But this is one of the earliest mentions we can find of it, and it has become known as Nessmuk's knife. And we know that he liked to have things custom made. So in the book it does talk about how he gets some of his tools custom made. So it's possible that he also had a knife made to his specification, which then became popularised, and that he had designed to his sort of spec. So in this picture we don't just see a belt knife. We see what we call now the Nessmuk trio, because Nessmuk was a huge proponent of carrying a sort of tool heavy approach in the woods. He liked a trinity of tools. So he would have this belt axe with a double blade, okay? He would have his Nessmuk knife, and he would have this little whittling pocket knife for small sort of woodworking tasks and other things like that. Now what I'm going to do is, before we look at my Nessmuk knives, I'm going to just read you the description of Nessmuk's tools, specifically the knife. And when you see my tools, you'll see there's a distinct difference between what is described in this book and a modern Nessmuk knife that you buy for bushcraft. There are others that are similar, that are probably more historically accurate to a Nessmuk, but for how I use a bushcraft knife, the modern take on a Nessmuk is far more versatile. So let's have a little read and then we'll have a look at some knives. So regarding his axe, he says he prefers the double blade. I want one thick, stunt edge for knots, deer bones, etc., and a fine, keen edge for cutting clear timber. Okay, so a lot of double bits. I have a double bit, has one edge that is okay to sort of put through the mud, it's okay to cut bone, things like that, and then a much sharper, keener edge for woodwork. So he liked having that double bit hatchet. A word as to knife or knives. These are of prime necessity and should be of the best both as to the shape and temper. The bowies or bowies and hunting knives usually kept on sale are thick, clumsy affairs with a sort of ridge along the middle of the blade, murderous looking, but of little use, rather fitted adorn a dime novel or the belt of Billy the Kid than the outfit of a hunter. So yes, Nessmuk was quite opinionated and did not like thick knives, which is where the knives I carry differ from the knives that George W. Sears carried back in the day. The one shown in the cut is thin in the blade and handy for skinning, cutting meat or eating with. Okay, so he used his knives for different purposes, whereas I use my knives a lot for wood processing, for woodworking, so making feather sticks, carving, making bow drill sets, needing to batten through timber to make splints, to make notches, things like that. He focused his belt knife on food prep, skinning and game preparation, which I don't really do too much of. I might do a little bit of food prep. I have done some skinning with my knives, but on the whole, the majority of the work I do with my belt knife is through wood, which is why I favour a thicker blade. He then goes on to talk about his pocket knife. Strong double-bladed pocket knife, the best model I have found, and in connection with the sheath knife is all sufficient for camp use. It is not necessary to take cutlery into the woods. A good fork may be improvised from a beech or birch stick, and the half of a freshwater mussel shell with a split stick or by way of a handle makes an excellent cooking spoon. So he is championing what we do. We go out into the woods with our tools. We use what we can find around ourselves in nature to provide the things we need. But he is doing it slightly in a different way. Okay, he is definitely relying on a trinity, a trio of tools to achieve his aims. He has specific uses for each of those tools. The axe, splitting wood, cutting through bone. The pocket knife for any whittling or making of little utensils that he needs, and the belt knife for cooking, for game preparation and that sort of thing. And through the trinity of his tools, he's able to accomplish anything that he wants to accomplish. Now, we in the modern sense of bushcraft like to have versatility in our tools. So we want a belt knife that can skin, but also can batten and can chop wood and can do any number of things. And we champion that sort of versatility in many senses. And it doesn't make Washington Sears' methodology wrong at all. It's not. Having a trinity of tools and a tool-heavy approach is something that I always think is very sensible. I normally have an axe, a saw, and a knife, and sometimes a pocket knife as well. Sometimes I have a battening knife and I have a woodworking knife if I'm going to do carving. So tool-heavy approach has proven itself in the past. But we do like nowadays to have versatility in our blades that can do more than one thing. So let's go and have a look at my Nessmuks, and we can look at the designs, we can talk about the makers, and we can see them in action. And hopefully you will all see how pretty awesome these knives are. And I have no doubt that having a thin stock Nessmuk would be fantastic in the kitchen, be fantastic for skinning, fantastic for game preparation. But my thicker stock Nessmuks, that aren't technically speaking Nessmuks because of that thick blade stock, are still viable woods tools and very versatile. So let's go have a look at those. Now, over the many years of camping and bushcraft that I've done, I've accumulated quite a large collection of tools, and I use them daily. Okay, I use my tools constantly. You only really need one good belt knife, and that could be a Mora. But I like to collect and I like to use them every day and rotate through my collection. So over the years of bushcraft that I've done, I've collected 4 Nessmuks, okay, all by different makers. And each of these is a fantastic tool in its own right. I don't think Nessmuk would have actually carried the 3 bigger ones, because I think they're too thick in the spine for him to have liked them. But for me, who prizes a one tool option and a tool that I can not worry about battening through a big log, they work fantastically. I can carve feather sticks, make bow drill sets, I can chop up my food, I can do anything I want with these knives. And so to me, they are brilliant. They are just fantastic. So let's have a little look at each one individually, have a look at their sort of design features and what separates them from each other. Recap why Nessmuk might not have carried these knives and how Bushcraft has sort of developed how we practice it. And then we will go and do a little montage of me using these, lighting a fire, cooking some food and that sort of thing. And I'll just use each and every one of these knives for different parts of that process to show you how good they actually are. So these are my collection of Nessmuks that I've built up over the last decade or so. Now this one on the right is made by Lee from Stony Path Knives here in the UK, and this is a fantastic knife, and I've put a lot of mileage on this knife. You can probably see it's patinaed up really quite heavily. I have put this thing through its paces, and I would trust my life on this knife. I think it's absolutely brilliant. It's got a lovely finger choil there to stop your hand sliding up, nice big broom handle grip. It's got a nice thick spine stock, so it's strong for battening, but it tapers down really nicely to this secondary bevel, which means that actually this one's fairly historically accurate, because whilst it's thick at the spine, it's actually very thin here at the bevel, making it a fantastic slicer, especially when coupled with this beautiful, beautiful belly, which means if you're doing feather sticks or slicing something, it just carves straight through it by just following that nice belly of this blade. So a fantastic knife. I will show you it up close. But yeah, Stony Path is a brilliant maker, and I highly recommend his take on the Nessmuk. So I'll bring you up close and then I'll show you the next one here on my little log bench. So we have the Stony Path Nessmuk with two-tone micarta with these beautiful red liners. And it's got a black liner in there as well. It's just stunning. Mosaic pins and this nice big blade, Stony Path logo there. This one's made of 01 tool steel, so it patinas nicely, but it's a good, reliable tool. Now, as I said, it's thick in the stock here on the spine, but I can't quite remember if it's 4 or 5 mil. But yeah, it's thick in the spine. But because of this tapering bevel, you can see that the actual edge is very fine. So if I just bring this up, hopefully it'll focus, you can see, hang on, you can see that the actual edge is pretty keen. So I think of all the Nessmuks I have here, this one's probably the most historically accurate. And yeah, it's a brilliant tool. So I'll show you that in use in just a sec, once I've talked through the other makers I've got on the table. Now, anyone who has watched my channel for a little while knows that I'm a big fan of survival knives and one-tool options, and sometimes I will challenge myself to come out to the woods with just a belt knife and a fire steel, or even just a belt knife and a piece of string, make a bow drill and do that sort of survival challenge with just a single tool. And that's where this comes in, because I had this design modified by Steve at Field and Steel, Steve Armstrong. Steve is such a great guy. He's become a friend because I've just fallen in love with his way of making knives. They're so utilitarian and functional and non-showy-offy. They just do the job and they're just fantastic. And this is his take on a Nessmuk that I've had modified into a sort of survival knife style. So on his original Nessmuk, he has more of a saber grind with a secondary bevel that's sort of a bit more similar to the Stony Path. So it would be thick, really thick stock. This is 6mm thick at the spine, but it would taper on the original Field and Steel Nessmuk down to a much thinner edge for slicing. Now I wanted a knife that I could pry with, that I could batten huge logs with, that I can chop with. So I asked Steve to make this out of 6mm stock, but instead of a saber grind, instead of tapering to a thinner edge, I asked him to put a really high Scandi on it. So a Scandinavian grind is sort of a V grind, so you've got an equal angle on both sides, and then just this slab of metal for strength. Now Scandinavian grinds are actually quite good for carving, and I can carve brilliant feather sticks with this. If I was looking for a spoon carving knife, I'd obviously want one that's not as thick as this and with a much finer tip, because I want to be able to carve around corners. That's not what this is designed for. This is designed for one tool option use, which obviously Nessmuk didn't go for the one tool option. He liked a trio of tools. But for if I'm just taking one tool to the woods, I need to be able to split wood, I need to be able to cut my food, I need to be able to do everything with this knife, even dig, even pry. So that's what this is designed for. This is a jack of all trades, heavy duty knife that will not break. And that's the design behind this. Again, I've got a lovely finger choil here that stops my hand riding up. Okay, a lot of Field and Steel's knives are pucos and don't have any finger choil. So for this one, if I'm tip splitting and things, I don't have to worry, because I know that there's this bit of metal that's going to stop my hand riding up onto that very, very sharp blade. And I love this knife. This is quickly becoming a favourite, just for the fact that I can pull it out, split a big log with it, and do a one stick fire very easily with this knife. Couple of nice design features that I'll show you when I do an up close of this. So let me take it down to the stump down there and show you the design of this Nessmuk. But as I said, if you don't have it modified to have a Scandi, it will be slightly thinner stock, and you can actually get these made in thinner blades as well. So you can have them sabre, you can have them 4mm or 5mm, I believe. But this one's 6 and is the full sort of survival package. So I'll bring it down to my stump and let's show you it. So first thing to show you then is the sheath. Now this is made of Kydex, and Field and Steel's Kydex is brilliant. Even though this thing is really heavy, it will not come out of there. And on the back I had Steve put this contraption because I wear this scout carry, because it's quite a heavy tool. This is a big chunky bit of metal. And I wear this cross-body scout carry, and so the belt goes through there and it sits horizontally on my belt, and then I draw it with my right hand from the left side of my body. So yeah, the sheath itself has been modified slightly for how I wanted it made. So if I just pop this out, you can see it is a beast. We've got this nice, I think, G10 handle, okay, with hidden pins that are also made out of G10 material that are hidden in this black handle. Got nice liners, and you can just see the thickness of this blade. But it still is able to carve and make feather sticks and bow drill sets and notches. When I made my shelter recently, I made an entire pot hanger setup, which I carved with just this knife. But for battening, firelighting, things like that, this is just brilliant. And what I really like is you've got this sharp spine here for striking a fire steel, but up the top here, he's beveled it off. So when I'm choking up to scrape birch bark and things, it's soft, it's gentle, it's got a rounded nose. And then down here, you've got your nice sharp 90 for striking a fire steel. So overall, this thing is designed to perfection as a one-tool option. But yes, of all the Nessmuks I have here, this is the least historically accurate because it's made of all modern materials with the G10, 01 tool steel, Kydex sheath, and it is the opposite of what George Washington Sears said of having a thin blade stock. This is a very chunky boy, but I actually don't care because I love this thing, and the thickness and the fact that you could not break this if you tried makes it a very, very special bushcraft tool in my eyes. So whilst this is a modern take on the Nessmuk design, and I don't think Nessmuk would have actually wanted to carry this because it's too heavy and in his eyes would probably be more suited to an action hero carrying it, I love it. And I would highly recommend you all check out any of Field and Steel's knives because they're all excellent. Okay, last two. I appreciate this is not the short video I said it was going to be. That's always the way. I'm always like, it's going to be a short video, and then I get chatting and get carried away and excited. So this one here, beautiful knife, very bulbous nose. I think this looks almost like a whale, this bit, but this is made by Willowwood Knives, who is a Sussex knife maker. I live in Sussex. This woodland is in Sussex, so I like supporting someone from the local area. this knife is gorgeous. Beautiful wooden handles, very traditional style grip, lovely sort of Coke bottle flare at the back, perfect if I'm choking up and want to do some chopping, but it fits my hand beautifully. It's a very comfortable knife to use, this. And this sort of almost has, it's got like a high convex, so it's like a saber grind that then goes convex. So the edge is very good for edge retention and strength. A little bit harder to carve with, this one, but yeah, I like it. It's sort of a hybrid grind on this. It's definitely convex now. I can't remember when I've got it, because I got this so long ago. I've had it for years and years. I can't remember if it was a pure sort of saber or high Scandi when I got it, and that I've convexed it, or whether it came like that. I can't remember. So the grind's a little bit of a mystery on this one. It's definitely been convexed, but I can't remember if that was me doing it or Willowwood. But yeah, very good knife this. Lovely grip in the hand, not too big, and this one's actually fantastic for game preparation and food prep. So this one again is actually fairly true to Washington Sears. The only difference is that the blade stock is 4mm, so a little bit thicker than I reckon his original Nessmuk would have been. If I was to guess, I would say his Nessmuk was probably a 2mm to 3mm sort of blade stock, whereas this is a 4. So yeah, but that's all hypothetical. Let me bring you up in close and show you this knife. So here is the Willowwood knife, and this sheath is beautiful, double layers of stitching. We've got this almost tiger stripe pattern. Probably isn't coming out on the video too well, but it's almost got this like tiger stripe pattern on the sheath. And if I pull it out, you can see beautiful bevel on there. Willowwood knives, very curvaceous, and it's got this interesting belly on it, which makes it very good for chopping. And I actually used this in the garden the other day for delimbing small bushes, and it was brilliant. It's almost like a little parang. Yeah, it works really well. Fairly thick blade stock, but not sort of survival knife levels. This is sort of 4mm stock, so about the same thickness as you'd get in a sort of classic Ramirez style Woodlaw knife. But obviously you got this thick sort of bulbous end which you can choke up on. Not so good for carving, but you can still do your notches, you can still do your feather sticks, and fantastic for food prep. So yeah, Willowwood knives, really nice maker, really lovely blades and tools. When I did my first ever Paul Kirtley course, there was another young guy on there who had a Willowwood Woodlaw, and every time he pulled it out, we'd all go Willowwood. So there's a lot of sort of sentimental value attached to these sort of things, because they're memories, and every time I use one of my knives I make more memories with it. So yeah, Willowwood, another highly recommended knife maker in the UK, and a really nice Nessmuk there. So the final knife on here is actually a little bit of a special one, and of all these knives, this is the one I've used the least, and there's a reason for that. I actually handled this myself. I put the wooden handle on it, I carved it, I made it in a workshop with my dad. So I bought the blade blank, and for the life of me I can't remember who made it. It possibly Dorset Woodland Blades, but I bought it at the Bushcraft show, and I bought the wood at the Bushcraft show, which is a dyed bird's eye maple, so it's got this green dye in it. I put green liners and mosaic pins. It's a beautiful little knife, very small handle, and quite a long blade for the size of the handle, but it's actually a very light knife, so this would be quite a decent neck knife. Or how I carry it, I got Paul Dore Bushcraft to make a little side carry scout sheath, which I can wear on my side like that, same as with the Field and Steel. And this I carry as a sort of backup blade. But of all of these Nessmuks, this one's had the least use, because I made it myself, and for some reason I can't bring myself to get it dirty, whereas these are users. I'll do whatever needs to be done. This, because I spent so long in the workshop making the handle with my dad, it's got a lot of sentimental value, so I try and keep it nice. But yeah, let me show you it up close, and then we will do a little montage of me using all of these knives to light my fire and cook my lunch. Okay, finally we have the little one. This is the one I handled myself. So it's got this bird's eye maple that's been stained green. You can see the green coming out mostly at the front there, but there's this sort of greeny hue to it, coupled with these nice liners that I put in and nice mosaic pins. So again, I put the handle on this myself. It's a blade blank that I bought at the Bushcraft show. It's a nice little knife, this. It's a little bit small in the handle for me. It's a 3-finger knife really. But as a little backup or neck knife or yeah, just little knife, if you don't want to carry anything big, it's actually very capable, and it carves really nice feather sticks with this Scandi grind. So yeah, not so much detail on this one because, again, I can't quite remember who made the blade. I think it was Dorset Woodland Blades, but the handle was made by me, painstakingly, and it took me a very long time because I'm definitely not a knife maker. But yes, it's a special knife, this one, because me and my dad, we made a couple of knives together, this being one of them. And so I try and keep this one from doing too much hard work, but I still do use it every now and then. And yeah, it's very nice and hopefully an heirloom sort of piece. Well, I forgot to mention this earlier, but it's actually the 4th of January today, which means yesterday was my 31st birthday. So we're sort of treating today as a bit of a continuation of my birthday. So we have a rather special lunch. In here, in my billy can insert, I have some Le Rustique Camembert. Me and Emma both love Camembert. Emma's here, my wife. So we're going to bake a Camembert, and we're going to do a steak each, and some crusty bread, and some crisps, and we're going to dip all that in our rustic camembert. So the camembert is under here baking away, and we're going to get some steaks on just to have a whole cook up a feast here in the woods. So while I've been nerding out about knives, Emma's been in the background reading her book and helping me film. Emma, what is your opinion on Nessmuk knives?
They're very good.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
So we're going to leave those to rest. Hopefully we've got them fairly rare. But yeah, smelling amazing with that garlic and rosemary, and the camembert as well. Whoa. Well guys, I'm not going to show you me eating this because it's going to be messy. It's going to be steak juice dripping down my chin. It's going to be cheese clinging to my beard. It's not going to be pretty, but what it is going to be is delicious. So yeah, I'll bring you back a bit later after we've had this just to say goodbye. But yeah, the Nessmuks performed really well. As you can see, they're very versatile. I can do anything I want with them. But before this gets cold, I need to tuck in. So me and Emma are going to go and enjoy this hell of amount of cheese and meat and bread. That is just ridiculous. Should be illegal, but it's not, so. Well, that was quite something. What a lunch. I am now in a meat and cheese coma and want to sit in my hammock and have a little nap. So I do have some other jobs to do in the woods as well. I'm going to saw up some firewood and things like that. So I'm going to have a little chill and then sort of that stuff out. But I'm going to end the video here. I hope you've enjoyed learning about these really interesting shaped knives. They're really practical, really useful, and they have developed from the thin blade stock to the thicker blade stock to fit our more one tool option bushcraft that we do nowadays, where we demand versatility from all of our tools and the ability to split wood as well as skin and do food prep. So I hope you've enjoyed learning about them and that you have learnt something. But regardless, if you knew all of this already, that's cool. But they are brilliant knives, so I do recommend them. I also recommend the book, Nessmuk, Woodcrafting Camping. I've actually read it a couple of times in my life. I think it's a really good tale, a really good book, which it sort of encourages people to get outside. And he recounts a lot of personal anecdotes and stories of his time outdoors, and he has lots of interesting scrapes and encounters and little stories to tell. So there's lots about like his equipment, but there's also recounts of experiences he's had in the wilderness and on camping trips. So a book that I highly recommend. If any of you have read it, drop a comment down in the comments box and let me know what you thought of it. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Happy New Year to everybody, and I will see you all in the next video very soon.